Welcome to the April 16th meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. The prayer is by Mr. Ron Washington.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Listeners and folks in the audience and employees and everybody listening, join me for a moment of silence, please. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you have the consent agenda in front of you. You have 4 items to consider.
Hearing no comments, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Gels-Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. You have minutes in front of you for the April 2nd, 2015 special meeting, the April 2nd, 2015 regular meeting, and the April 7th, 2015 special meeting. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes?
Hearing none, I'll move for passage.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels-Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll consider for third reading passage of ordinance 15OZ01 to rezone an area along Bradyville Pike at South Rutherford Boulevard to Highway Commercial CH District and Commercial Fringe CF District.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Gels-Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Second readings. Consider for passage on second reading ordinance 15027, amending Murfreesboro City Code Appendix C, City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Employees Revised Pension Plan, Article 10, Pension Committee, Section 10.01, Committee Members.
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels-Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now consider new business and consider for approval a renewal of certificate of compliance for Vijay Ravel, Matish Patel, and S. Patel, Mukesh Patel at Old Fort Liquor and Wine, 144 Cason Lane, Suite B.
Mayor, this is a state requirement. Every 2 years, a liquor store in place has to get the certificate of compliance renewals from the local government, and I recommend these for approval. They have met our requirements.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Got Mr. LaLance and Mr. Young.
Ms. Gels-Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklett.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Pursuant to Resolution 15OZR23 adopted by the City Council on March 12, 2015, will conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 15 acres located west of Memorial Boulevard from single-family residential 15 RS15 district to highway commercial CH district. James B. Haynes Family Real Estate Partnership applicant. Notice of said public hearing was published in the March 30, 2015 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland, and good evening, Mayor McFarland and members of council. Our first public hearing tonight, as you mentioned, is for approximately 15 acres located along the west side of Memorial Boulevard, just to the north of the Adams Place Retirement and Assisted Living facility there on Memorial Boulevard. This is 15 acres of the Haynes farm, which is currently zoned RS15. The applicant, the Haynes family partnership has made a request to rezone this 15 acres to commercial highway, CH, for the development of a grocery store anchored retail center. The frontage of the Haynes tract along Memorial Boulevard is already zoned commercial highway. That was zoned commercial highway 2 or 3 years ago after the Walmart on Memorial Boulevard was approved, because the Walmart takes up the entire tract that it sits on. There's no room for out parcels. So both the east and west sides of Memorial Boulevard in this vicinity were rezoned to commercial highway in order to make provisions for potential out parcel uses that would likely soon follow the construction of the Walmart Supercenter. The subject tract is 15 acres. It borders Adams Place, as I mentioned. It also borders the Haynes Haven subdivision to its south, which is zoned RS15. Adams Place is zoned PUD. The balance of the Haynes family tract is zoned RS15, but about 800 or 900 feet to the west is the Ravenwood subdivision, which is also zoned RS15. Further to the north, at the intersection with Iron Gate Boulevard, are several developed commercial highway uses, including the post office and the Bojangles. And across the street are a number of residential uses that were a part of that rezoning back in 2012, 2013 to pave the way for some commercial out parcels. In fact, we have seen one site plan at the Planning Commission level for a 3-tenant retail building directly to the north of the Walmart Center. The Walmart is zoned commercial highway as well. As I mentioned, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this unanimously. We do anticipate that the grocery store anchored tenant would be on a lot that would have frontage on a new public street that would start from the intersection, the newly created intersection of Lieutenant Patrick McBride Drive and Memorial Boulevard, which is the northern signalized intersection to the Walmart facility. So there will be a new public street constructed in to the west of Memorial Boulevard into the Haynes tract. And eventually, the transportation master plan that we have reviewed, that our transportation staff has reviewed with the design engineer, this street extension would extend north to Iron Gate Boulevard so that if this rezoning is approved and commercial uses are developed on this property, users coming from the west would not have to go all the way to Memorial Boulevard only to get off of Memorial Boulevard. They could take this connector down from Iron Gate Boulevard along the new street down to the proposed user. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. at Northfield Elementary School. There were approximately 40 attendees at the neighborhood meeting, including members of the planning, engineering, and transportation staffs. It's a productive meeting. We were able to hear some of the concerns of the neighbors and provide them information prior to the Planning Commission public hearing. The Planning Commission did conduct a public hearing in early March and did recommend approval of this rezoning request unanimously. If you have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them before or after the public hearing. And Mr. Brick Murphy and the development team would like to make a brief PowerPoint presentation as well before the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, members of the City Council and staff. I'm Brick Murphy of the law firm of Murphy, and I represent the applicant, which is Franklin Land Associates, and the developer is GBT. I also represent the Haynes Family Partnership, and we'd like to give a brief PowerPoint presentation. I'll kick off, and then Jeff Pape from the developer is going to give you a little information about GBT, which is a development group out of Franklin, just up the road. And then Clyde Roundtree from SEC is going to give a presentation as well. And then we'll close with any questions you may have. The application is to rezone approximately 15 acres from the existing RS15 classification to commercial highway. Once again, for the public, RS15 is the standard zoning classification that property is brought into the city, and when the Haynes Family Partnership property was annexed into the city, it was annexed in at RS15. The project is to build an upscale grocery store. It's a new to the Middle Tennessee market, this grocer is, and the center will provide additional space for some additional tenants as well. It's a portion of the Haynes family property. It's behind the existing C8 zoned property, which is on Memorial Boulevard. It is across the street from Walmart, and it is right next to Adams Place. The 231 West Drainage Basin study, which was conducted by Aubrey Fly in 1995, was pursuant to an agreement between the Haynes family, the Adams family, as well as the Waldron family. And this basin is directly behind the proposed development that we're talking about. The Aubrey Fly study in the 90s indicated that as the Haynes family property came on for development of commercial highway, that this basin would be excavated as part of the process. The pond is designated for stormwater management and anticipates the future development of all the Haynes property, not just the property before you tonight. And the pond will abut Haynes Haven as well as the Ravenwood subdivisions. While serving for the purpose of stormwater management and water quality, the pond will also serve as a buffer. It's about 17 acres in all, and it's a very large retention area that will serve as a large separation between the single-family existing subdivisions and the development on the 15 acres we're proposing. Just to get y'all situated, and I'll try not to shine this in anybody's eyes. This is 231 Memorial. This is the property that the Hayneses had rezoned to commercial highway a number of years ago. Here's the proposed, here's the drainage basin, which is right now a soybean field. Here are the single-family subdivisions. Here's Adams Place, and here's the development in question. The proposed development, that is. Just a little background on the developer, Gbt. They're headquartered in Franklin. They're nationally known for their quality. They're a sophisticated development team. My firm and my father, through my father and I, have worked with them for decades. Based on my experience, they're one of the best in the game, and we're very fortunate to have them wanting to do a project in our community. They've got a proven track record. They've brought this developer, which they'll talk a little bit more about in a second, this tenant to town. They're also known for bringing in smaller tenants who follow large national tenants as well. And Mr. Jeff Pape with Gbt will talk a little bit about his company, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the Haynes family, and then Mr. Roundtree will close our presentation.
Thank you, Brick. Good evening. My name is Jeff Pape with Gbt Realty Corporation. We're a privately held real estate development company founded by George Tomlin in the late 80s. George is a native of Franklin, grew up in Middle Tennessee, and has always kept the business here. Gbt has developed over 5 million square feet of retail space throughout the U.S. Since 2008. We're one of the more active developers in the Southeast through one of the most challenging economic times. We're very fortunate of that. The 5 million square feet of retail equates to roughly $1 billion worth of investment-grade development, and we work with all the major national tenants. We're very proud to be able to bring a new tenant here to Central Tennessee. The anchor for the project, which we announced for the first time at the Planning Commission, is Sprouts Farmers Market. They're very excited to be coming to Murfreesboro and to come into the metro Nashville area. Gbt is very proud of all the developments we do. We hold most of the stuff we do in Tennessee. Some of the stuff we do out of state, we do sell off, but we do maintain a significant portfolio. Just some pictures of some of the developments we've done in the area. The Shops of Brentwood Hills, the Target Anchored Center in Brentwood is a project we're proud of. The Kroger here in Murfreesboro, of course, was developed several years ago, quite a long time ago, almost 20 years ago now. Academy Sports and Outdoors just up the road in Smyrna is one of our developments. And Pear Tree Village, which is currently a Harris Teeter, which soon be apparently a Kroger, in Brentwood is also one of our developments. Some of the basic zoning requests, the zoning will require a type D buffer, which will certainly be installed to protect the development from the residential area. Some things that we have offered to do that are above and beyond the requirements of the zoning code. We're agreeing to 0 foot candle lighting levels at the property lines. I believe the code allows 0.5 foot candles. We'll do that through the use of shields on the lights and making sure we point the light straight down when it gets near the property lines. There'll also be an REA that'll designate the area in the rear stormwater. Again, Brick talked about that a little bit to create somewhat of a buffer. And some things of that nature. So we're doing a few things that go beyond what the code requires. With that, I'm going to turn things back over to Brick, but I'm certainly here to answer any questions. Just want to tell you a little bit about GBT and a little bit about the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Haynes Family Partnership. The Haynes families owned this property for over 100 years. They've got a proven track record in development of quality, aesthetically pleasing projects, which include the Brock across the street from Sportscom, from the Rite Aid down to the Franklin Synergy Bank. The tenant, the developer, and the Haynes family have all agreed to some restrictive covenants that will be placed on the property during the development process. The restrictive covenants prohibit uses such as Family Dollars or discount stores, uses that cause an unreasonably loud atmosphere for the neighbors, such as large exterior speakers, manufacturing facilities, car dealerships, boat dealerships, tire stores, car repair stations, gas stations, secondhand stores such as Goodwill or Salvation Army, and your overstock, your liquidation sort of outlets. Carnivals such as laser tag, carnivals, uses such as Chuck E. Cheese or your arcades, any sort of adult-oriented businesses, gun ranges, pawn shops, hotels. We appreciate your time and interest in this project. Our team will be here to answer any questions you may have at the end, and we appreciate your support. And I'll hand the presentation over to Mr. Roundtree, and we'll keep it short. Thank you.
Thank you, Brick. Mayor McFarland, council members, city staff, thank you for the opportunity. We're excited about this project. I'm Clyde Roundtree with Huddleston Steel Engineering. It's been exciting to be a part of this process, and it's neat to see this coming to the north side of Murfreesboro. Mr. Motherman, thank you for your time in our neighborhood meeting. From our observations, the neighborhood is excited about what's about to come, and I know with GBT's involvement, Mr. Haynes' involvement, the desire is to create an upscale, a really nice development, and this will be a catalyst for more to come. As far as from a design standpoint, we'll handle more in site planning, but we feel like we've confidently met the needs that the neighbors were concerned about the distance and the buffer. The drainage retention pond area was designed, as Rick mentioned, with Aubrey Fly's study, but it's created a significant amount of distance between the GBT development and the actual property lines for Haynes Haven and Ravenwood. So we think the distance is going to be a real asset to the development, that's going to be created by the natural water, the detention pond. We're also committed. We met with the Adams Place people, and their concern was really the light conditions. And as Mr. Pape mentioned, they're exceeding the standards for the city ordinance. So we're confident that as far as lighting is concerned, it'll be well within the levels acceptable by the ordinance, but exceeding that. But also the development itself has some internal regulations. They typically turn their lighting down in the evenings after they're closed to security level lighting. So the folks at Adams Place were happy to hear that. I guess a lot of their treatment areas are on the side of their facility where this property is going to be developed, so they wanted to make sure that wasn't going to be prohibitive. We're also, to the best of our abilities, going to try to preserve the natural buffer that is there, as well as enhancing what we need to enhance. We do have some drainage issues that might be going along the Adams Place property line, so we may have to infringe upon some of that natural buffer. But our desire is to keep it as natural as possible all the way along that property line. So, and the last concern was just over traffic, and we feel like Memorial Boulevard is more than capable of handling the capacity that this development will create. And as Matthew mentioned, the internal circulation of the new public road that'll tie into Iron Gate will also assist this development. So from a planning standpoint, we're confident that we've addressed the concerns that the neighborhood has, as well as other surrounding community members. The North Murfreesboro Alliance has shown up on a few occasions, and we feel like we've met their concerns as well. But I'm sure if someone is here to speak publicly about that, we'll address the concerns that they have, and I'll be available for questions as well. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Okay. We'll read the rules for public hearings. We'll ask you to please come to the podium, state your name and address, ask you to speak no more than 3 minutes unless you're a spokesperson for a group. Please address all comments to the council. At the end of the hearing, we'll do our best to address all comments, and each person will be allowed to speak only once. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll consider for passage on first reading ordinance 15OZ23 to rezone an area located west of Memorial Boulevard to Highway Commercial CH District.
Move for
Mayor.
approval.
Second.
I'm sorry, did you have a comment?
No.
I've got it.
We're fine.
Oh, you did, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We have a motion, a second, discussion.
I know we're all excited about it. We're all ready to say vote. But I do want to say what a fantastic job you guys did at alleviating the concerns of the neighborhood. We had a huge turnout at the neighborhood meeting. All of them came in concerned, and all of them left out somewhat relieved, and any questions that remained after that have obviously been taken care of. So you guys did a fantastic job in the process, and with the neighborhood meeting and how it worked, that's a perfect example of communicating and making sure that everybody understands exactly what's taking place. I don't think there's been anything that has been announced at a planning commission meeting as of late that has gotten quite the attention that your announcement did. It blew up Facebook. It got more likes and comments than anything that's. I think it's the #1 story for the D&J this year. So I know everybody's excited about the store and what you guys are doing in that community. It's certainly a welcome addition to Memorial Boulevard, and it's something that people have been asking for. And so congratulations on not only your presentation, but bringing a business that is very much requested to our community.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Great comments, Mr. Smotherman. Ms. Wright, we'll call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Okay down there. Okay down there.
Pursuant to Resolution 15OZR24, adopted by the City Council on March 12, 2015, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning 3.2 acres from single-family residential 10 RS10 district to single-family residential 12 RS12 district. 0.28 acres to be rezoned from single-family residential 10 RS10 district to single-family residential 15 RS15 district. 6.75 acres to be rezoned from single-family residential 12 RS12 district to single-family residential 10 RS10 district. 3.04 acres to be rezoned from single-family residential 12 RS12 district to single-family residential 15 RS15 district. And 1.06 acres to be rezoned from single-family residential 15 RS15 district to single-family residential 12 RS12 district, located in the Salem Creek subdivision south of New Salem Highway. Salem Creek Partnership applicant 2015-404. Notice of said public hearing was published in the March 30th, 2015 issue of a local newspaper.
Would you read that again, Mayor?
You're out of order.
So,
I think it was just as hard to write as it was to
Bromley.
read. Mayor McFarland, members of council, this rezoning request pertains, as you mentioned, to the Salem Creek subdivision along the south side of New Salem Highway. And you can see that is a multifaceted request. I guess that's a nice way to put it. And by looking at the map in front of you, all of those different colors represent a different rezoning request. The subdivision, the subject tract was annexed into the city in 2003, and there was a companion zoning request that was approved for RS10, RS12, and RS15 for the tract to be zoned that way simultaneous with annexation. At that time, no detailed engineering studies had been done, and there had just been a rough conceptual layout of the proposed subdivision. The developer did his best in laying out the proposed subdivision boundary, the zoning boundaries in the subdivision, based on how he thought the subdivision was going to develop and the street pattern and the layout of the lots. As the subdivision grew, lots were platted, and the lot lines did not always follow the zoning boundary as it was approved. So the result is that there are a number of lots in the existing platted subdivision sections of Salem Creek that have multiple zoning classifications. And so where that becomes a little bit challenging is in enforcement. If you have a lot where the back third of the property is zoned RS15, and the front third of the front 2/3 of the property is RS10, and you have different side setbacks in both zoning districts. And so what side setback do you apply, or do you apply two different side setbacks depending on where you are at the lot? So the planning director met with the subdivision developer, and it was determined that it would be in the best interest of everybody involved to look at some rezonings for the subject subdivision to clean up the zoning boundary lines for the existing sections, but also to look at the future sections and how those zoning boundaries would coincide with the proposed lot layout now that the subdivision developer, 10 years into the development of the subdivision, had a much better idea of the subdivision lot layout and had done more detailed engineering analysis on the subject tract. So what you have before you are zoning boundary changes, all within the subdivision, all based upon that analysis. I will mention that although there are numerous rezonings from one zoning classification to another, all of it was staying within the same three zoning classifications that were approved back in 2003. And as you can see, they're just small amounts of acreage in each instance. So the zoning for the subject subdivision was RS15, 12, and 10 to begin with, and it will remain RS15, 12, and 10 if this zoning request is approved. The City Council will need to conduct a public hearing on this matter. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I don't believe a representative of the developer is here, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval, I forgot to mention.
Any questions for Mr. Ballman? Okay. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider for passage on first reading ordinance 15OZ24 to rezone an area in Salem Creek subdivision south of the New Salem Highway to single-family residential 12 RS12 district, single-family residential 15 RS15 district, and single-family residential 10 RS10 district.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Shacklet was the second. Ms. Wright, will call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Pursuant to Resolution 15OR25 adopted by the City Council on March 12, 2015, conduct a public hearing to consider amending Murfreesboro City Code Appendix A zoning sections 24, 26, and 27 regarding separation of and landscaping between a building and drive-up through lanes. Planning staff applicant 2015-802. Notice of said public hearing was published in the March 30, 2015 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blom.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Our third and final public hearing tonight is a zoning ordinance amendment that the planning staff, after having the Gateway Design Overlay District regulations for 10-plus years now, we have experience in administering those regulations. And one of the things that we found over the years is that we have a requirement where there are constantly variance requests being made and constantly variance requests being approved. And in zoning, when you have repetitive variance requests going time and time again to the Board of Zoning Appeals, it's at that point that you need to take a look at the regulations and see if changes are warranted. And in this case, we do think the changes are warranted. And the specific regulation that brought these changes to the forefront was a minimum separation requirement in the Gateway Design Overlay District between the building and the parking lot and/or access drives. There are certain uses that are permitted in the Gateway Design Overlay District that have building elements that really are a necessary element of the use. An example of this is a drive-up window for a restaurant or a drive-through teller for a bank. And every time that there was a drive-up window for a restaurant or a drive-through teller for a bank, these uses were having to come back to the Board of Zoning Appeals, adding another process and another month in most instances to the process when everybody was in agreement that these these elements of the building were essential to these uses being able to function. So we as staff looked at the ordinance, came up with a list of similar situations where we felt they were reasonable to allow exceptions to that requirement without the developer having to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance. And so this ordinance amendment codifies a list of permitted exceptions whereby a variance would not be required. The examples that I gave you are two of the examples in that permitted list of exceptions. Also, as we looked at this ordinance amendment, there were several other sections that were similar in nature, one being the base of building landscaping requirement, both in the gateway and outside of the gateway. There are certain instances where the base of building landscaping requirement is simply not practical. And there were already exceptions in the zoning ordinance, but we felt we needed to clarify those exceptions and maybe add on to them so that variances would not be needed for these typical parts of buildings, such as areas where vehicular access is required, where pedestrian access is required, things of or where a drive-through pickup window for a restaurant is required. There should not be base of building landscaping required where a car has to queue right next to the drive-up window. So with that being said, the Planning Commission did recommend these ordinance amendments unanimously, and we as staff feel that these changes will help take out some unnecessary layers in the development review process. I'll be happy to answer any questions either before or after the public hearing.
Any questions? All right. Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider for passage on first reading Ordinance 15025, amending Murfreesboro City Code Appendix A zoning, Section 24, 26, and 27, regarding separation of and landscaping between building, drive-up, and drive-through lanes. And I just wanted to make the comment that I think this is a great things that we can see where we're helping the process and we're still protecting the city. So I think this is something that is good, and appreciate you guys bringing that to us.
With that, I'll move for passage.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Plumley. We'll consider for recommendations of the Planning Commission to schedule public hearings, and he's coming back, to consider rezoning north of Joe B. Jackson Parkway, HI RS15, rezoning along east side of Agri Park Drive, RM16, rezoning along south side of Veterans Parkway, CF RS8, and amendment to Victory Station PUD along the west side of Fortress Boulevard.
Yes, sir, Mayor McFarland. During its regular meeting on April 1st, 2015, the Planning Commission conducted public hearings on the matters listed below. After the public hearings, the Planning Commission discussed the matters and then took action to recommend their approval. Number one, the rezoning application for approximately 26.36 acres located north of Joe B. Jackson Parkway to be rezoned from light industrial to heavy industrial, and 4 acres to be rezoned from light industrial to RS15. Parks Harney Investments and Sarah L. Jones Johnson were the applicants. The second item is a rezoning application for approximately 4.47 acres to be rezoned from Commercial Highway to RM16, located along the east side of Agri Park Drive. Beach and Farrah Properties applicant. The third is a rezoning application for approximately 2.86 acres located along the south side of Veterans Parkway to be rezoned from RM16 to Commercial Fringe, and approximately 12.59 acres to be rezoned from RM16 to RS8, Cornerstone Development applicant. And the fourth one is a PUD amendment for approximately 12.17 acres along the west side of Fortress Boulevard and the Victory Station PUD. Murfreesboro ILAL Investors LLC was the applicant. One item of note, the first public hearing, the one for Joe B. Jackson Parkway, the applicants have requested that that public hearing be moved out approximately 2 months. Typically, we'll schedule our public hearings about a month from this date. They have requested that that be pushed out an additional month so that they can review some things with a potential buyer of the property.
Mayor, for the first request, I would suggest June 18th. For the other requests, I would suggest May 14th. Mr. Ives will be in position to assist you on the 14th.
Okay. Lawyers need vacations too. Maybe.
Okay. We have these dates. Does that look okay to everyone? A motion would be much appreciated.
Move we set a public hearing as to the dates that Ms. McGannon has outlined.
Second.
Because I can't remember.
We have a motion and a second.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baumann. We'll hear from the City Recorder, Finance Director with regards to the Tax and Finance Department activities and the Weston Consultant regarding new financial software project.
Tonight, I'd like to highlight 2 of the more major activities in our department. I hope most of you by now have made the opportunity to stop by the department and see our remodel. It's nearing completion. We've taken a very large, inefficient workspace and modernized it, made it more convenient for our staff, where they don't have to stand at a long counter for hours on end during our busy times. And I've heard from the public, on the public side of the counter, they feel like they have a little more privacy because of the separations we've done from one station to another. So I think so far that's a success. We have 2 rooms left to paint and carpet, and we need a storage closet painted and some custom shelving done. And then we'll have our staff help us with the punch list. We'll get some walkthroughs done and try to get that wrapped up. We still have some furniture to bring up from the street department that we got at state surplus. And we still have to hang art and pictures on the wall. We haven't gotten to that yet. Our staff and throughout the building, I think we've had a lot of compliments on our redesigned break room. We try to do a lot with a very small space compared to what we had, and we still have things to hang in there. We've been kicking around some ideas to make it user-friendly in addition to the seating. We're hoping to add a bookshelf and start an honor library where people want to recycle their paperbacks and hardbacks and magazines for others, and trying to get some ideas along that line to where it's user-friendly for our staff. The other big project, which a lot of people know a lot about, is our financial software project. We have been investing our time and money in getting a modern financial package. Before, we had COBOL, which was a very good program, very stable program, but antiquated in today's world of software. So we have with us tonight our Weston consultant, Stacy Allcamp. She's going to update us on the software project. And while she comes to the podium, I want to mention our core team on the project. We have Aaron Tucker, who's our project manager overall of the project, and Pam Russell, who's working with our HR project, and Vicki Ordonez, who will be doing court. We have Doug Swan, who's helping us on all of those combined for the water sewer portion. Chris Lilly and his team have been wonderful in helping us with IT, and that kind of is the main COBOL replacement core. Additionally, one of the new modules, which we've never had on our side before, is the main purchasing module. That'll be a big learning curve for everyone, and that's being overseen by our new purchasing director, Althea Pimsel. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy and let her guide you in how she's helping us manage this project.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening, council members. As she said, my name is Stacy Allcamp. I'm a consultant with Weston Engineering. I've been here working with the city and also with the Department of Water and Sewer for the last little over a year on several different software projects. We're here to talk tonight about the ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Project, primarily the financials piece of that. It's a 3-part project. So you have a presentation there in front of you. You'll see on the cover of that presentation the ERP program status report. That's what we're here to talk about today. There are 3 pieces to this project in large part. The financials project, which we're here to talk about tonight, the HR and payroll project, and then the court systems project is the 3rd piece of this project. Each of those projects have multiple modules within them that are being worked on as we speak. So I just want to hit first some of the major benefits that the city will see out of these new systems. The first is talking about best practices. We're focusing on not taking a new software product and wrapping it around older processes that were in some ways constrained by the software people had available at the time. These are the new best practices that will help you run a more efficient and effective organization and reduce risk by putting you on a new software product that will continue to be supported and won't be out of date. Also, you will have a reduction in your manual processes, duplicate processes. Anything that's duplicated or manual is a place where you can have gaps and have risks to mistakes and things like that. So these new systems, with their automation and integration with other systems, help reduce all of that risk as well and make you more efficient. The users will have online access to information. A big win for most of these new products is the ability to have better reporting, and I have a couple of examples of those reports that I will show you tonight. And then finally, the online and centralized purchasing function we mentioned under the new director, Althea. And users will be able to view their orders and have much more access to information immediately online. And then also they will have better reporting for themselves and visibility to the spend of your entire organization. So you can take advantage of better ability to purchase and use your money wisely in spending for the city. When I show you these examples, I want to stress the fact that these are not using the city's data. These are examples from a general example from the vendor of what you will see. So one of the great things about the new systems are these financial or other dashboards that you have where you have a quick and easily customizable view. Depending on what your role is in the organization, it's not the same thing for everybody. So what you have here is a financials dashboard, but you could have that for human resources, for payroll, for whatever you need in the system. So those are very flexible and useful for quick information for all the management team to be able to see where you are at any one time without spending hours gathering manual data from several sources. Similarly, there's a bunch of new budget reports that are much more effective at being able to gather data quickly, not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year. This is an example of a report with month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date actuals. So you'll be able to pull these kind of reports with a click of a button rather than several hours worth of data gathering, which will help you be more effective and efficient as an organization as well. This is a historical budget comparison where you can easily see prior years side by side and change your parameters as you need to in these reports to get the information that you need. These are all financial reports. You'll see account trial balance. There are many of these reports that you would be able to see all by fund or by spend category with purchasing, where you can get data across types of accounts and spend and how your account debits and credits are in terms of the finance project itself. So this is a timeline. This is really shows the three different pieces of the project. The top one is the one we're focusing on tonight. That's Tyler Financials. So we're doing this in two phases, primarily to reduce risk. If you focus on a smaller piece of the project and the more critical modules initially, it's going to greatly reduce your risk in terms of a go live and being able to make sure that you can handle your primary business functions first, and then you can add additional modules as needed. So we're doing a phase one, and I'll talk about a couple of those modules in a moment, but without too much detail. I want to give you just a picture of what this looks like. So if you look at the bottom of the graph there, that's your timeline. That red vertical line is where we are now. So we're about halfway through the entire project. We're almost to the point where you can see the end of the top green bar there is 7/1/15. That's our go live date for the financials project, the initial phase. And then below that, you'll see two bars that are the HR and payroll project. That's two different products, actually. In addition to contracting with Tyler, we contracted with Kronos for timekeeping because they have a little more flexibility and functionality in their timekeeping, especially around tour of duty and some of the more complicated pieces that the city has for timekeeping. So Kronos is already well along in their project, and we've just now kicked off the Tyler HR. So they'll be working together now to integrate those two systems. So that will be going live. You can see those. The third and fourth bar kind of extend out to October 15. So 10/1/15 is our current target date. These are both the initial target dates. And then Tyler Court is the third piece, and that's just getting started now. And we're hoping to get live on that at or near the end of the year, but we're allowing into the first quarter for that to happen. So that is our timeline. And then just a couple of details on the financials project. Again, we're phasing this approach in to reduce our risk. So the first modules that will be going on will be financials, purchasing, AP, budgets, and reporting. Those go live here soon in this quarter, July 1st, at the beginning of the next one. And then phase two, fixed assets, grants, and bids. That's go live on or by December 2015. I think fixed assets will be going sooner than that, but that second group of modules will be phasing in through the rest of this year. So just a couple of highlights from the project. There was a large-scale effort to do a new chart of accounts. This was a huge amount of work by Melissa, by Aaron Tucker, and the whole team in financials. Took several months to give you a much more flexible chart of accounts that can grow with you as an organization, and then make your reporting much more effective and give you more clarity into your organization. Right now in the project, we're finalizing configuration of the financial system and going through training on those modules so that we can start our testing here in the next few weeks. Just going to touch on HR and payroll for a moment. This is the combination of the two systems, Kronos and Tyler Munis. Kronos started all the way back in last summer. That includes pretty complex timekeeping that you have here in the city. And we're working now, we've already finished the timekeeping design. Now we're working on the accruals and leave piece of this system. Tyler and Kronos are going live together on October 1st of 2015, so just in a few months from now. So we're starting testing in the next couple of months, and then training will be July, August, September before go live on 10/1. So that's really the update on the project. This will allow you to be a much more flexible organization with best practices, better reporting, and visibility into your organization. Does anyone have any questions before I sit down? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Ms. Wright, thank you for all your staff's been doing to work.
We have wonderful staff, but they have all been working very hard. I appreciate them.
Through a move, a renovation, and now software change.
Being very patient.
Item 11 has been removed from the agenda. We'll consider recommendations from the Water and Sewer Board with regards to SSR Task Order 1441-018.0 to create a water resource integration plan in conjunction with the City of Murfreesboro Comprehensive Plan.
Mayor, City Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you tonight and go over this project. I think I have got this plugged in properly, and hopefully you can join the live, there we go, the live broadcast here. I went away from the free version, and now I've got the real version, and so it should be able to get online with me.
Mr. Gore always stepping it up. Really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Try. I'm just a geek at heart, gadget guy. What we have, and the reason I have the Murfreesboro 2035 plan up here is really this, the Murfreesboro 2035 plan was foundational in springboarding off of this comprehensive plan. So this water, you ask yourself what a water resource integration plan is. Well, that's a holistic view of how do we handle water as we continue to grow. You can see here that we always want to balance affordability with sustainability, and that's the key word, is sustainability. We have our annual strategic planning document, and that's something we update each year. It's very thin, it's easily updated, but we need that 20-year comprehensive water resource integration plan. How are we going to deal with stormwater, domestic wastewater, drinking water, and our reuse water? You may not know this, but we have the largest water reuse system in the state of Tennessee. We've got 2 elevated tanks. We have buildings that use it for flushing. We have 600 acres of farms that use it for irrigation. We also have golf course, soccer fields, a lot of places. Everything on Medical Center Parkway uses it for irrigation. So it's really a high-quality commodity. So how do we deal with that as we grow? Well, strategic thinking by Shoemaker. I've got the Murfreesboro 2035 plan here. I think what it accomplished was it identified some basic trends, some key uncertainties, and some learning scenarios that we needed to deal with as we move forward with water. How do we deal with the water? The Water Resource Integration Plan is really intended to develop quantitative models and evolve towards those decision scenarios. How do we take those key uncertainties and trends that we've established, and how do we actually move forward on business decisions and develop business cases to meet that growth that we know is coming? This is out of Section 2.8 of the Murfreesboro 2035 plan. The complex matrix of challenges warrants this type of holistic approach, and it recommends ultimately that we need to develop this roadmap, this strategic roadmap to deal with the growth that we know is coming to Murfreesboro and our urban growth boundary. Something I like to bring out, and this is just, I call it reverso world. I know that's kind of silly, but in a way it's not. Most places out west deal with water supply. They've got a limited supply, and they've got growing water needs. We have a situation where we have an existing assimilative capacity inside it. We've got a small receiving stream in the West Fork, and we're going to be generating more effluent as people move in. How do we deal with this effluent? So we've kind of we're contrary to a lot of the different places out west. We've got a big lake that's going to supply our water. We've got to figure out how we're going to get rid of this effluent we generate. We've got some pretty strong programs right now. We've got a aggressive fog and pre-treatment program. We've got strong I&I removal, infiltration and inflow removal program. We've got nutrient removal. We've gone to advanced nutrient removal. We're doing land application. We're selling it as irrigation. We're also looking at ultimately trading with stormwater, nutrient trading, and ultimately potable reuse. And people may ask, what is potable reuse? And you may have heard, I'm not going to use the term because I don't think it's a good term to use. I'll shoot you an email what it is later. But what that does is it says, what is the highest value of this? What is the highest value of this reuse water? We treat it to such a high degree of purity. We think that ultimately it should be the best use for a raw water supply. That this is such a high quality water, it should be put back into the the beginning reservoir or the feeding reservoir to our water plant. And they're doing this out west. This is coming. It's a little bit ahead. The southeast isn't accustomed to that. It's a bigger culture change here because we're so water rich. But it is occurring out west, and it's going to have. It's just the cheapest way. They're putting really good clean water into the ocean, and then they're having to desalinate that water again, and it doesn't make good economic sense. So that's coming here. So I've developed this. How do we bridge this gap? And I think right now we're on target. We're on target for 2025. We just got the plant expanded. We've got advanced nutrient removal going on. John Strickland has done a great job at the water, not just John, everybody at the wastewater plant. So I think we're good for a 2025 time frame. How do we get to 2035? Well, we're going to have to get out of the box. We're going to have to do some of this stormwater trading. We're going to have to continue to land apply, develop partnerships with agriculture and commercial development, and ultimately I take it on a little bit past 2040, where we've got to change the culture so that by that time frame we've closed the loop. That previous slide I just showed you. And this is consistent with where the industry is right now. It's called Sustainable Integrated Water Management. It talks about partnerships. It talks about using the right quality for the right use. I mean, you treat the water to the level that it's only needed to. You don't treat it to drinking water standards just to go apply it to your lawn. At some point, we can't be taking drinking water and using that to irrigate lawns. We also look at it's a utility of the future. Oh, excuse me. Where we're not just handlers of wastewater, but we become managers of sustainable resources. We're not just seeking permit compliance, but we are watershed scale environmental leaders looking for least cost, highest return solutions. We're not just engineers designing treatment plants, but we're regional planners of weather resilient green communities, and we're not just isolated public service units, but we're integrated members of an economically thriving local community. And that's consistent with where we're at on several partnerships. I mean, I think just over the past 6 months, I have just really thought about where are there some partnership opportunities in Murfreesboro, and where do we really need to go out and find win-win solutions. We've got several farms around town that I think would benefit by using our reuse water. We have an industrial partnership with Indian Hills and General Mills. That should be a total win-win for both of those entities. Every gallon of water that General Mills puts on Indian Hills, it doesn't pay the Water and Sewer Department. Every gallon of water that Indian Hills gets to put on its golf course, it doesn't pay CUD water to irrigate that golf course. So there's some real opportunities here. Development partnerships, we've always talked about the Dill Rushing Lines property out east behind the Walmart down John Bragg Highway. We've got to figure out how to make that happen. And that may be where the Water and Sewer Department becomes the facilitator of a zero discharge treatment system out there. Because it's not going to, we can't send it to any streams, and it's way too much money to get conventional sewer out there. So this graphic didn't come out very good. I think it was a font during the translation, but I tried to key in on the Murfreesboro 2035 logo. I know that's disappointing, I'm sorry. But we're trying to, we want this to be a companion document to the 2035, and again, develop those decision scenarios and develop those quantitative models to meet the need we know is coming. We want to get ahead of this. So the proposal that in front of you is a Smith-Seckman-Reed task order. It has got a very detailed hourly schedule and the different components of the task order itself. The total is a $409,160. I know that may seem like a lot, but compared to a lot of communities' water resource integration plans, this is not that expensive. And based on what kind of capital expenditures we're looking at and the budget that the water and sewer deals with, it's a pretty good deal. And this may just get us so deep into certain rabbit holes, and we may later have to continue to go deeper. We're trying to find business models or business cases and develop those partnerships. And There may be subsequent designs that come out of that. But with that, I would ask for your approval for the Water Resource Integration Plan, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Hey, Darren.
Yes, sir.
Would you, I was listening to everything you said, but can you just give us a quick little summary of what it is that you're requesting? I mean, and
If you look at, I'll take you to the page here, and I don't have the agenda in front of me, but well, there's 7 different tasks. Task 1 is summarizing the water system history and challenges. Task 2, vision of the future. Task 3, water system supply evaluation, wastewater system evaluation, repurified water system evaluation, stormwater system evaluation, and the water resource integration plan prep. We've talked with CUD. We know that CUD is going to be a partner in this plan, but it effectively looks at the holistic, the water cycle, and how do we develop those partners, how do we define those key business strategies to move forward, not just talk about them, but start putting timelines and putting values to, is this an endeavor we need to pursue? And if it's not something we need to pursue, we need to redirect. Because we have to, go ahead.
Sorry, bud. The $400,000, that is consultants
That's
to
consultant.
build okay. Yep.
Yes, sir.
Just want to make sure. So what we're voting on would be to approve spending that money to build this plan out.
Yes, sir. We've had this budgeted since January of 2014, but we wanted to wait on Chapter 2 of the Water Resource Integration that dealt with infrastructure capacity.
It's all about the water. It's all about the sewer.
Darren, not so directly related to what we're talking about here, but where would you propose that the water would be stored? I mean, would it be large retention lakes at the treatment facility, or are you thinking possibly moving the water treatment facility closer to the?
Well, one of the partnerships that I've identified is really trying to get it over to the MTSU farm that's by the water plant. So ultimately, I want to store it in the East Fork River behind the Walter Hill Dam, but I don't know if our culture is ready for that. We've actually looked at the old abandoned quarry out there off Old Nashville Highway that LoJack has to see that that is again something that we've talked with LoJack about, and if they would have an interest, if we wanted to develop some type of storage agreement for that old abandoned quarry or purchase it or something, that's on the table. I mean, that's a consideration. We may have to have something. That quarry can hold about 750 million gallons.
Also be a great reuse of it. I mean, what do you do with an abandoned quarries? Yeah. Thank you.
It's pretty exciting, interesting.
It's fun. I mean, this is the part that's really fun, honestly. It's just trying to get ahead of it. The challenge is, as you all know, I mean, I think I don't want to go off out of school here, but you've got Parks and Rec. I mean, you've got some other planning documents that I think need to springboard off of 2030. 2035 plan is going to take you to a certain point. You're going to have to go deeper in the rat. You're going to have to start developing those. What do we actually pursue, and what do we start putting a business case towards, and setting dates and milestones to actually achieve what you're trying to do.
I'm going to ask you this, and I know you wouldn't have brought it to us if you didn't think it was the right thing to do. My question is, $400,000 is a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
And because I just don't know any better, I just want to make sure I ask, is that the appropriate amount of money? I mean, is that a reasonable amount of money? Is that the appropriate amount that we really kind of need to do, have to do in order for us to hit our objectives down the road?
Well, and I'm going to say that's, for example, City of Franklin spent $2 million. They spent, no, we can't do that. We're not Franklin, and we can't spend that kind of money on an integration plan. So we backed into this. I said, I think $400,000 would be a good number to start, good money to start off with, and then we see where it takes us. And honestly, that's the way a lot of this is going to end up. We may go down certain paths, and it doesn't make business sense to pursue it from a investment standpoint of putting infrastructure in the ground, because it's going to be too expensive. So we may spend some money and hit some dead ends on investigating it, and then we may hit some home runs, but we have to develop a full spectrum of solutions, because as we start even going through the implementation of those solutions, we may hit some walls and have to make some adjustments. So I believe it's fair. Yes, sir.
Good, thanks. Nobody.
So where is the report back to this on the progress of this and how we're spending this? Is this at $400,000 that's just there and we're going to hear when the plan comes together, or are we going to see how that $400,000 progresses?
We can bring you as many reports. I can get up here and give you as many reports as you want.
We can make a plan.
No, we want to.
I'm just thinking there are probably high points or benchmarks, or in that as this thing comes together, for us to see how the dollars are being spent.
Sure.
Is probably appropriate. I'm sure you're considering that, but I just
absolutely. There's a very detailed hourly schedule, and I've talked with Mike Bernard, and Kenny Deal is here with Smith, Seckman, and Reed, and we don't want this to just be. I mean, there needs to be some producibles, right? We don't just want hours burned on something that we're not getting a deliverable on. So we can come back with a schedule, and what I really intended for it to do was to shadow the 2035 plan. As the 2035 plan, I was real excited to see that Chapter 2 was the infrastructure capacity plan, because I thought, bam, that's going to give us the platform to springboard off of. And so one of my main expectations is they're going to follow the 2035 plan and make sure that we're consistent with how that fleshes out over the next 18 months. So we can get a schedule back, and we can develop milestones and come back and have reporting highlights for you as we move along. I've talked with Bill Donnell at CUD, and I'm actually going to be giving a presentation. We're going to give the 2035 presentation on Chapter 2, and what I just gave you, I've asked if we could get in front of the CUD board so that we could try to nurture some buy-in. I hope that answered your question.
No, it did, and it also gives you a little publicity and for the public to kind of see how this is progressing. So I think that would be probably a good thing.
I used to think this education stuff was kind of, but we've got to to change the culture. People have to get a real high comfort level with what we're doing, and so we want it to be, we want high exposure while we go through this.
Nobody else has any more questions? I'll make a motion. Everybody good?
Yeah, that 2035 plan, I hope a lot of the public's paying attention. I don't want to say too much, but the numbers that they are giving us are explosive for the growth for Rutherford County and Murfreesboro. And I've been on the Water and Sewer Board. I've been on a bunch of commissions and things, and all of them are great and some good volunteers, but Darren deals with some pretty strict, stringent folks on that Water and Sewer Board, so they have the ratepayers' interest always in their minds, and I appreciate serving with them and doing this, but I really want to take a plug for the 2035 plan. Public, pay attention, because the challenges facing Murfreesboro, if it happens, I don't know, the way they're projecting it, it'll blow your mind.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, please call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. We'll consider recommendations of the Parks and Recreation Commission. A for a professional services agreement with Losing Associates, Inc. for drainage and turf renovation at Richard Siegel Park.
Mayor McFarland, members of the council, good evening. I do have two items for your consideration. The first one is a professional service agreement for the drainage and turf renovation at the Richard Siegel Park. Of course, you remember that Richard Siegel Park was constructed in 2005. And it has experienced really heavy use since that time. And over those 10 years, we've seen a lot of different teams come from all across the country and enjoy Richard Siegel Park. And last year, we had an event that caused significant damage to the turf. We had a lot of winter kill. And we put a long-range plan together, a short-range, a long-range, a mid-range plan together. And we said that in the mid-range plan that we would evaluate the turf in early, mid, and late spring of this year and determine what we needed to do to get that back to a optimal playing condition by August the 15th. And we've done that. We've identified 2 areas that we think is in the critical path of making sure that we can do that. One is the drainage. Over the 10 years, what we've seen is the swales that was established during the initial construction silt in. I remember when we were developing the construction plans, we were talking about whether we were going to put underground drainage, what kind of drainage that was going to be there. That was very cost prohibitive. And what you have now is you have what we call sheet draining across the fields, and in some cases it sheet drains across 2, if not 3 fields. And what we're proposing is to go back in, number one, to check the elevations to see where we are at this point and where we were at the point of construction, to see if those have changed. Number two, to reestablish the swales that we have currently, and then to add some additional swales so that as the water runs across the fields, that we can catch each individual field. One of the other things that we've identified in the drainage plan is we think we need some French drains out there to take the water down and move it to different locations. The second thing that we have identified, and our turf manager, Mr. Lamb, is doing a great job, by the way, and we certainly appreciate the council's consideration for hiring that person. But one of the things that he's identified is the fact that we have a considerable amount of thatch that has built up under the surface. In some places, that thatch is as much as 4 inches deep. What that is doing as the water tries to sheet drain across the fields, that is acting like a sponge and it's soaking it up. So the drying time is much longer than traditional if the water can get across the field. And so that causes that spongy condition. We know we've got to go in, we know we've got to remove the thatch. In some areas we'll be removing 1 inch, other areas we'll be removing 3 inches. In some of the areas, the turf will grow back. There's enough underneath in terms of the structure of the plant for it to grow back. In other areas, we'll have to resod. And so that will be a part of the plan as well. So we'll be identifying in this plan those particular areas that will need to be athletically planed. There's an athletic field planer that we'll bring in. The contractor will bring in and actually take that thatch away. But we'll be determining in there which areas we think will grow back and which areas will need to be resodded. Lowson Associates has agreed to do this work for a lump sum of $19,486. And that money would come from the department's savings or from the budget for unanticipated expenses. Staff and administration has looked at this. This was presented to the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Commission on April the 8th, and it was unanimously approved. And therefore, we would recommend that the City Council approve the professional services agreement with Lowson Associates, and the City Council authorize the mayor to execute said agreements upon legal review and approval. And I'll be glad to answer any questions on this first one.
I just want to mention, I obviously am intimately familiar with the park and the fields and the situation, and will add my 2 cents that this seems like it's critical, a critical thing to do in order to keep that as a functional park for what we really intended it to be 10 years ago. So for the whatever it's worth column, I'll add that. And Lanny, I do want to ask, from a timing perspective, this is, we're getting real close to needing to make something happen. And I if we have a plan to go in June 1, June 5, whatever it is, to get the actual work done, whatever they figure out we need to do, I don't know the right way to say this, but I'm going to say this out loud right now, and it's kind of probably for a Susan or Rob thing. Because the timing is so critical, the way that the seasons shape up out there, they basically are going to end right around June 1st by the time the state tournament's done. And then we get cranked back up typically by August 1st, but man, really need to be cranked back up by September 1st for sure if we can. So what I want to say is, if there's anything we can do to facilitate, expedite the next stage of the process as it relates to, do we have to wait for the Parks and Recreation Commission to approve the next step, and then we got to wait till the next council meeting to then approve it? I don't want to cut out the Parks and Rec Commission by any, I don't want to do that. Yep, sorry. I don't want that to happen, but we need to expedite it. And if there is a way to do that, I guess I'm putting my 2 cents in. We need to do it. Let's do it. If we need to do it, let's do that if the timing works out that way.
Okay. Mr. Lance, I've had that conversation with with the A&E firm. I've told them how critical our timeline is. I want to get the contractor there basically about the second week in June, right after the State Cup, so they can start working. You're right, timing, we've got about 10 weeks to get that done. It takes about a day and a half to play in one of those fields. You're thinking 11 fields, that really kind of pushes you up. And when you start looking at sodding, grow in, so we're going to have to evaluate the ones that are most critical first and make sure that we give them ample grow-in time if that's what we're going to do. If not, then we've got to pull the trigger to sod those.
Yeah, and I guess what I mean is from our standpoint, if we need to get it approved sooner rather than later, that I'd be willing to not wait for the kind of typical process if it's an agreeable thing to do and is what everybody else would think to do, I guess is what I'm saying, or whatever we can do to expedite it for you is what I guess I'm trying to suggest. Okay.
Understood. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess there could be a special meeting of the Parks and Rec if that's needed. I mean, there wouldn't be any problem with scheduling as long as it's 30 days out. I don't guess.
Or the council can act without the Parks and Recreation Commission's recommendation.
Just if we need to, and like I said, I don't want to circumvent that if we don't have to. But if the timing works out, I think we probably will need to if the timing works out that way.
In the past, I know this has been presented to the Parks and Rec. They know it's coming.
Yeah.
In the past, where we've tried to fast track things, I brought it on to the council, then it brought it back to the Parks and Rec at their next meeting.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Just to expedite.
Lanny, are you seeing much in the rise zones as far as the Bermuda grass and stuff? Are we starting? Is it gotten warm enough yet that we're seeing any growth develop?
We're seeing some growth of Bermuda. Now, if you go out there and look at the fields now, they're really pretty. They're really green, but that's the ryegrass, and we don't know once we transition out of the ryegrass how much of the Bermuda is going to be back, and that's the late season evaluation that we'll be doing. And we may not have that done by the time we put it out to the streets. That's why we want to put a unit price in here too. So by the time we come back to try to get this approved, hopefully we'll know the quantities that we'll need for resodding at that point.
All right, we have a motion and a second, I believe. Do we have a second, Ms. Wright?
I don't think we got a motion in a second. He was leaning towards one, but I'm not sure he made it.
Yep, I'll move to approve it. Thanks.
Second.
Motion and second.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll consider for professional services agreement with Lawson Associates for plans and specs to construct a soccer practice facility on the Jordan Farm.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council. On October the 31st, the council approved a feasibility study for us to go look at the possibility of building soccer fields, practice soccer fields, and help relieve some of the stress that we have now at Siegel with play and practice. And we have done that. Lawson Associates has worked with Water and Sewer Board, Water Sewer Department, and we've determined that the Jordan Farm would be the best site. There's a preliminary site plan that's in the back of your materials for you to look at. This site plan develops approximately 6.5 full-size soccer fields, along with parking, perimeter fencing, and some walkways in that area. We estimate the construction cost at about $850,000. What we'd be doing is going out and actually grading that entire site, getting those where the playing surface. What we heard when we met with the soccer community is it's very important to develop a quality playing surface, regardless of whether that is a practice field or whether that's a game field. So we're going to be grading those, putting good quality turf on it. We'll be sprigging basically 419 Bermuda into those playing fields. Also on March the 20th, we met with the Water and Sewer Board. I attached the letter that Mr. Cromley had sent to the Water and Sewer Board. There was quite a bit of discussion. After the end of discussion, they approved the concept so we could move forward with our A&E, but most of the discussion centered around the lease agreement. And we agreed that the city administration, water administration, and legal would get together, work out the details of the lease, and bring that back to the Water and Sewer Board for their consideration. But they did approve us to move forward with the concept plan. This agreement would include all of the plans and specifications for bidding and construction administration. Lawson Associates has agreed to do this for a lump sum of $46,200. Staff and administration has reviewed this. It was approved by the Parks and Recreation Commission on April the 8th, and we recommend that the agreement be approved in the amount of $46,200, and the council authorize the mayor to execute said agreement upon legal department's review and approval. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about that.
So Lanny, tonight in this one, it will be just to get the 46,000 for the specifications, or the?
This is for the 46,000 to go ahead and do the plans and specifications and get it ready for bid. We would go ahead and put that out for bid, then we would bring those bids back to the city council for consideration for construction.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. That's right.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin, when is
Yes,
your-
sir.
a projected finish date on the Jordan Farm?
We think it'll be late fall. We're saying somewhere possibly October. And again, it's going to be weather contingent because you're going to be grading, you're going to be dealing with basically what we call dust and mud up to a certain point. But we want to set our time schedule so it's somewhere around October or earlier, because one of the things you got to realize is as soon as we can get the sprigs in the ground, that starts the growing period, and that's our plan, is to sprig this practice field. And so, if we can get a month or two in late fall, that's wonderful, but we know that it will be ready by spring of 2016, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Could I say just the same thing goes to that one, and actually that one may be more important from a standpoint of expediting the process, because we don't have to wait till June 1st on this part, because we're not having to wait till the state tournaments and the leagues are over. You know, we could actually get started on this side before June 1st. So if there is anything that we can do to expedite the process, please let us know.
And to follow up on what Mr. Gord said earlier, we will be using the reprocessed water for irrigation. And I've asked him to try to get that to Barfield Crescent Park. We're using potable water there for irrigation. So Parks and Rec is a user of that commodity, and we would love to see it in all of our park systems.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin.
Thank you.
With the council's indulgence, I would like to ask that item 14, that if we can move that to our next meeting to discuss. If that's okay.
Good with me.
Okay. Mr. Ross, thank you for your work that you've done so far on that.
You're very welcome, and no objection from me, for sure.
All right, Mrs. Wright, do we have any beer permits?
Yes, we do. We have a restaurant that's relocated to 417 North Thompson Lane. That application is ready for issuance upon your approval, and we do recommend approval for that one. We have a convenience store that's changed owners at 2898 South Church Street, and that application is also ready for issuance upon your approval, and we do recommend that. We have two that are contingent upon finishing up their building codes inspections. One is a restaurant at 225 North Rutherford Boulevard, Suite A. That's a new location for beer. And one is a nightclub bar at 1453 Silo Hill Lane. And that is also a new location. I believe that's in a new hotel. And both of those we would like to issue upon completion of their building codes inspections.
Yeah. Okay, you have these beer permits in front of you.
Move for approval.
Second.
That's right, we have a motion and a second.
Ms. Gales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. You have a list of statements to be paid in front of you.
Rob, can I ask you one question on the Gateway Pond? I was hoping Chris Griffin would be here, but is this $77,000 or so we're spending here, is this going to get our recovery line? Is that got us shored up there as far as the pond's concerned? And
The bill, it says it's a pump line repair
Yes,
from Rollins.
And that's the return line going from the base to the pump, right?
I believe you're correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And that was the concrete pipe that we've had trouble with.
Correct. You changed pipe material.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll take care of our dropout problem that we were having around that line. So hopefully that's a good thing. I'm going to move that we pay the bills.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Other business? No, we have no board and commission appointments. Other business? See Mr. Huddleston at the podium.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, members of the City Council. As soon as Mr. Ives returns to the council chambers, he'll distribute for you First Amendment for an agreement to convey some real estate for the fountains at Gateway LLC. And I'll remind you, this is for the fountains at Gateway Phase 1 project there on Medical Center Parkway.
Said you could go to the bathroom.
And if our AV guys can help out and get us some light on this thing. If not, we'll continue to work through it, but we do have an exhibit that might help you understand what we're looking for. So you do have in front of you an amendment to that agreement. If you'll recall, March 19, 2015, at the regular City Council meeting, you approved a contract to convey property to fountains at the Gateway. Consisted of 12.69 acres in Phase 1. That agreement allowed certain due diligence activities before closing on the property. Two items were brought up during that due diligence: landfill gas migration and unsuitable field. And then in reviewing the development plans for the fountains at the Gateway Phase 1, we've also determined that there's going to be a right-of-way dedication required for public road improvements and signalization improvements. And I'll discuss these items further in the following presentation. In 2004, the city closed the old city landfill. It's about 29 acres that's located in this map, and I should rotate that for your viewing convenience. And try that image now. In upper left-hand corner, you'll see the old city landfill. That's a portion that abuts the 31-acre property that we're looking at for the fountains at the Gateway. And we closed that old landfill, and we had a post-closure care plan and some other projects, some other documents that we closed that site under. We installed a passive gas venting system for landfill gases that build up and accumulate in closed landfills, and that's primarily methane. 2009, you'll recall, we converted that gas system to an active gas extraction system. We're continuing to operate that active gas system and continuing our routine monitoring and reporting to the state of Tennessee. Fountains conducted a Phase 1 environmental assessment on the full 31 acres. One of the issues that came up during that Phase 1 report was the potential for gas migration from the old city landfill onto the fountains property. And so what we have proposed and what the fountains requested was that the city confirm our obligation in the event that gas migration happens, confirm our obligation that we'll be responsible for that. And what we're suggesting to you tonight in our amendment to the agreement is that we're confirming our responsibility for that. We're picking up no more liability than we already have for the old city landfill, but we are reinforcing for the project and for its lenders that the city is responsible for those consequences. On unacceptable field, if we could look at the exhibit again, the lower left-hand corner, we also operated for about 6 months in 1973 a 6-acre landfill on the old McFarland farm. That 6-acre site covers Phase 2 and part of Phase 1 of the Fountains project. We removed the solid waste from that property in 2000. You might remember that project. It was an extension of the closure of the old Rosebank dump, and we relocated that waste. The state of Tennessee no longer considers this a waste disposal site. But in the years following that, some miscellaneous materials were placed back in there and filled. Geotechnical reports and test pits and other investigations revealed a significant amount of unacceptable fill on this 6-acre landfill site. The city's agreed with the Fountains project that unacceptable fill, where it impacts Phase 1, should be removed from the project. And so we have worked with a contractor that will be building the project, and they've provided us estimates based on some quantities that we've established, and we estimate that it'll cost approximately $150,000 to remove and remediate that unacceptable fill. Third item is public right-of-way dedication. During the review of the site plan, we identified a public right-of-way dedication that's needed to support signalization improvements for the east entrance, and then there's turning lane improvements that may also require right-of-way dedication. Those plans have not been fully developed at this point, so we could not determine at this stage the exact amount of right-of-way dedication. We don't feel that it's appropriate to have a purchaser pay for the property and then turn around and dedicate it back to the city. We would normally in that situation exclude that expected right-of-way from the transfer and then only transfer them the remainder of the usable property. Based on the preliminary plans, we estimate that it's about 6,000 square feet of right-of-way that would be required. Our sales price is $5 per square foot, and so When that right-of-way is determined and dedicated back to the city, we're proposing to refund Fountains approximately $30,000 for their payment on that right-of-way. Physical impact of these issues, upon the sale of this property, the city will receive approximately $2.7 million in proceeds, and that'll be due to us at closing. We're proposing the $150,000 and also the $30,000 be refunded and repaid out of the proceeds of that sale, of the proceeds of the sale. So I have 4 recommendations for you tonight. If you have any questions on the information we've covered, I'd be glad to answer those now. If not, I would like to review the recommendations with you.
Any questions for Mr. Huddleston?
Mr. Huddleston, when you collect this unacceptable fill materials, where will you move it to?
We've identified a couple of locations based on what we think the nature of the fill is. We think it's mostly wood waste and debris from some land clearing activities. We also believe it's some unacceptable topsoils that were put in there from drainage maintenance activities. And so we've identified a couple of properties, one of which is the Rosebank site, where we have a project scheduled for this fall. Talked with the design engineer today, and we believe we can incorporate those materials into the project down there. They're certainly not suitable for buildings. We don't believe they're suitable for parking or other hardscape as well, but could potentially use them in some other projects on site.
Sorry, these are things that sound like ultimately we're going to need to be doing one day anyway.
Right. Yes, I believe that's right. Reviewed the issues with staff, with the legal department, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Crumley. We do believe we have a responsibility, especially on the gas migration and the unacceptable fill.
Yep.
I'm always a little hesitant to not have a top side limit on something when we say it could be more.
150.
Than the 150,000. You guys will have some discretion over that. If it starts to get way above that we'll talk about it again, perhaps.
Yes, that's correct. I think if the number becomes excessive, and we'll know that within the next few weeks.
Okay.
Mr. Graby is here in the audience tonight, and he's representing, of course, the Fountains LLC. We've received from him today the final state permit approvals, and so he and his contract team are eager to get started. We'd like to see this real estate transaction closed before they break ground on the property.
Yep.
This will be not necessarily the first thing out of the gate, but we believe it'll be the second or third major task that the contractor will work on.
Is it better that we have someone else handle that and then we reimburse them rather than just us handling it?
Our original proposal, our original thought was to use our contractor and our resources to do that. But because of the relationship of this remediation work with their grading work, we were concerned that we'd be on top of them or they'd be on top of us. We'd be in each other's way. The other thing we want to do is we want their contractor to be comfortable that the materials that go back in their work zone, they control and they're comfortable with that. So we felt like it was a much better situation to rely on their contractor and let their contractor and their forces put the material back in. We're hoping that there are some economies of scale. This is a several million-dollar project. We're talking about a $150,000 grading operation, so we're hoping there's some economies of scale in having their contract forces do it rather than us contract outside of that.
That makes sense.
There's no more comments. I'll move that we pass it, approve it.
Second.
Let me review the recommendations. I do believe we'll need 4 motions on this. And on the recommendation section. No, one motion is good for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all we need.
I'll stand corrected. Sorry about that.
And these are the 4
Thank
things.
you.
These are the 4 recommendations that are here in front of us, correct?
That's correct.
So I'll move for approval of the four recommendations in front of us.
Councilor Harrison.
And I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaVance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Young.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Any other business to come before the city council? Okay, seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you.